Hi, I'm Frances Proctor. Welcome to the second part of Xara Plus Filter Forge, Extrusions and Textures. I left off last time after applying the realistic pumpkin texture to a Xara created extrusion. In this concluding part, I will show you how to create an extrusion and use Designer Pro X's new eraser tools to remove unwanted parts. And then in Filter Forge, I will show you how to apply a new texture. And finally, I will bring you back to Xara and show you how to use Xara's built-in liquid color filter to create a realistic bent and twisted stem for the pumpkin. Are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, last time we left off after creating our realistic pumpkin texture. And you can see here I have applied it to the extrusion here in Xara, and I have the extrusion locked down, which for the time being is very important to do with Filter Forge effects, is to make sure they are locked down before you proceed with doing anything else. So I'm going to pull this down here now out of the way, and we're going to start work on creating a realistic looking stem. Before though we get into the actual stem, I'm going to prep the top of the pumpkin here to create more of a little bit of variance of color where the stem actually joins the pumpkin. And to do that, I'm going to create an ellipse here, just like that. And as you can see, my ellipse has already got the fill on it, which is basically, I will show you here, a elliptical fill, just a simple elliptical fill set to fade. And you can see here, I'll zoom in, where I have double clicked on the horizontal fill handle line here, and I've added a extra color stop, and I've given it kind of a green color. And the main ellipse had this kind of I guess I'd call it a reddish orange brown color. You can experiment with different colors and see what looks good to you. But for now, this is what I'm going to be using. Now, as you can see, this really looks plunked on top here. It's not blending in with the pumpkin at all. And we need to do just a couple of little tweaks to this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the transparency tool, and I'm going to give this a fractal plasma transparency. And I will hold down the shift key, and I'm going to pull the bottom of this, or this vertical handle down. By holding down the shift key while I do this, I can control these handles individually. If I release the shift key, I can resize the transparency handles together. Alright, that's beginning to look pretty good, but it's still a little harsh looking, so we will start by profiling the transparency, and these profile sliders here can allow us to make the effect harder or smoother. Well, I'm going to make it a little bit smoother. I really encourage users to experiment with these profile settings. A lot of Xara's tools have this feature. Just clicking this arrow here on the info bar for most tools will bring up profile sliders, and they can really help you fine-tune all kinds of aspects of the different tools. Alright, so now this is looking a little better. The next thing to do is to go here to our feathering slider, and you'll notice you can also profile the feathering. I'm going to pull this up and give it a fair amount of feathering, and I will enable the profile so you can see how the profile affects the feathered edge of the object you are feathering. I can adjust these sliders to fine-tune that edge. Alright, so I'm going to leave this for now. we will probably fine-tune this a little bit more once we get our stem in place. But let's get to building that stem. Now the stem begins with a quick shape. A simple starred shape. And you want to make sure that you've got Create Polygons enabled and the star shape button enabled. I'm going to make a simple 5-sided star shape, and I have enabled curved corners, so my star shape will have a curved point to it. Alright, now here's our star shape. Now you can see that the program is applying the same fill to it. We don't want that, so I'm going to go to the fill here, and I'm going to change it to a flat fill, and I'm going to make it at about 50% black. And we will bring up our extrude tool, click this button to give it a default extrusion. I'm going to pull this up, play around with the rotation just a little bit. We kind of want the rotation to look fairly close to that pumpkin. We can bring it down here on the top to see how that looks. That looks good. Now back to my extrude tool, and I will lengthen this out. I'm going to lengthen this out quite a bit. This is actually longer than our stem is going to be. But you will be able to see when I apply the rest of the extrusion features here and change the bevel type that we are only going to be using about half of this. So I'm going to change the bevel to angled, and I'm going to up this bevel quite a bit. And I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm going to actually pull this up a little bit, make it a little bit longer. And I think I'm going to stop at this for now with the bevel, and we will bring up the lights. Slightly adjust the lights. Let's take off the glossiness because I really don't need a glossy looking stem. Play with the lights just a bit more. You can see how I'm bringing out more of the lumpiness here in the extrusion. Bringing out a bit more of the details. Trying to adjust this. Okay, this is what we're going to go with for now. Now, as I said before, we're only going to use about half of this. I just want this top half of the extrusion. I don't need the bottom half. But I'd kind of like to be able to keep it as an extrusion, because even though I won't be editing the extrusion anymore once we apply the effect, applying the Filter Forge effect to an extrusion rather than a bitmap copy of it, which is what it would become if I just sliced it through, it would become a bitmap effect. And by applying it to the extrusion itself, the effect seems to have a bit more of a... It looks better, let's put it that way. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use Xara's new eraser tool. And I'm going to click the shape eraser. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to... Well, first I'm going to actually go down to a bit smaller eraser. And I'm going to bring the softness up on the eraser. But I'm not going to bring it up a whole lot. I'm just going to bring it up to about maybe we'll bring it up to about 10%. So you're still going to get a fairly sharp edge here. But what making this eraser slightly soft has done has changed the way the eraser tool works. Without any softness, the eraser tool would just slice through this, and we would have the two bitmap looking pieces instead. You would have a vector shape filled with a bitmap, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to zoom in, and with it being soft, we will have it will create an opacity mask instead. which is it will hide and mask out the bottom part that we don't want, but yet it still keeps this as an extrusion. So to start, I'm going to just go in about here and go like that. Now I'll zoom in further. And I'm going to try and follow the edges of this fairly close, but I'm not going to worry too much at all about being exact, because once we apply the Filter Forge effect and then come back into Xara and do a bit more work on this in Xara, you're not going to see this bottom edge at all anyways. So I'm going to erase this much out, and I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to make my eraser tool bigger and just quickly erase over all of the rest of this, quickly removing it. And I'll go back here, bring that down, see how that looks. I think that's going to work all right. Okay, now as you can see, when I select this with the selector tool, I'll just pull this down. The rest of it is still there. It's just masked out. It's transparent, but it's still there. Now we're going to go into Filter Forge. So let's click our Live Effects tool. We're going to go New, and I'm going to go down here to Filter Forge, and I'm going to select Filter Forge 3. And this does take a little bit longer than it normally would, because I do have a recording happening here while I'm doing this. For you, this should work a little faster. So now I'm going to go down here. Whoops, I'm just going to cancel off this. I'm going to go down here, and I am going to go into my filters, and I have a filter already set up that we're going to use for doing the stem. I'm not going to go through all the steps again, as I'm going to try and keep this portion of this very short, because to be honest, I do believe the last one did run much longer really than I would have liked. Okay, so this is basically what the stem filter that I've created is going to do for us. You can see it is giving our stem an organic, bumpy look. It's rough on the edges, and we've got different colors blending in here. I will quickly open the filter editor so you can see how the different parts of this filter have come together. I will quickly show you how it's done. You can see here, as this loads, I've got a purlin noise here and a chaps noise here, and I'm blending them together over here. And up over in here is where we're bringing our source image into it, which, as you can see, is our extrusion from Xara. It looks a little squashed in here because Filter Forge fits it into these thumbnails. And as you'll recall, the rest of the stem extrusion is still there. You just can't see it. And I'm going to just go over here, and you can see how I've used again the gamma and the set alpha. I'm blending things together here and there. And you can see here where everything finally goes into the surface color, and I've got a second little branch here going into the height. And it all blends together to give us this nice looking stem. So now we'll go back to the main Filter Forge interface here, and I'll just quickly show you some of the settings that I've got, that I've included on here. I've got settings so that I can put in whatever colors I would like blending in here, So basically I could use this with a bit of tweaking to create perhaps tree trunks, branches, as well as stems. I can control the contrast and the roughness, the scale, and the stretching. I can do a lot with this. And the angle, I could adjust the angle in here if I so wanted. But for today's tutorial, I'm going to leave this just as it is, and I'm going to click apply, and we're going to go back to Xara, and I'm going to show you in Xara how we're going to take this very straight looking stem and how we're going to make it twisted, and we're going to form it, and we're going to make it look a lot more realistic. So we'll apply this, and this is going to take probably a few minutes longer for me than it will for you because I'm recording while doing this. Okay, now our stem has rendered, and of course the first thing I'm going to do is to lock this down. Alright, now I can put this on the pumpkin, and as you can see, it's really a lot wider than we need it to be, and it's not at all realistic looking yet. This is where Xara's liquid color filter is going to come in very, very handy. Now, I'm going to bring this over here, and we're going to go to the Live Effects tool again. Click New, and this time we're going to go and have a look at the built-in filters, which are up here in this top section. And under the deformation filters, we're going to go down here to liquid color. I will click this, and this brings up the liquid color filter. Now, I'm going to show you this because we do have to go back to Xara for a minute before we get into the liquid color filter. But what you will see happening here is we've got this space at the bottom, which is good, but the liquid color filter really doesn't give us a lot of room to work with at the sides. It's really close and tight to the edge of the stem, and that's not what we want. We need a bit more space to work. So I'm going to cancel this off, and I'm going to show you how to deal with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to my quick shape tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to draw this rectangle big, and I'm going to encompass the bottom part of where the bottom of the extrusion would be, and I'm going to give us extra space all around here, and I'm going to send this to the back now. Control Shift B to bring it behind the stem, and we're going to go into the transparency here, and I'm going to give it a flat transparency, and I'm going to take it all the way up. I don't want to take it up to 100%, but what I want is about 99%. Now I'm going to go to my selector tool, and with that transparent rectangle still selected, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select the stem and hit Control G to group it. Now we're going to go back into our liquid color, and you can see the difference in what I've done here. So Live Effect, New, Deformation Filter, Liquid Color. Now you can see the difference. Now we've got room on the top, plenty of room on the sides. We've got plenty of room to deform our stem and twist it and do all kinds of things to it. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to pull this up. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the brush size a bit, and I am going to use the default setting here of draw, which will allow me to basically push and squish the image in, and I'll push it in here at the top, push it down there, and I'm going to push it here some more. And I just got to wait a minute here as Xara's making a backup copy. There we go. And you can see how this works. I can bring this part, squash that down, maybe bring this part up and over. It's important to be careful how you work this. You've got to work it slowly, a bit at a time, because if you draw too much and try and say grab it here and pull it way over here, it's actually going to smear the image, and we're trying not to do that. Pull this sort of in here more, and I'm going to squish this down. Squish it down here more. And I'm going to zoom out a bit and have a look at that. It's starting to get bent. Now I'm going to bring this brush size up quite a bit, all the way up, and I'm going to pull that. And I'm going to push that, and I'm going to pull it like this. Again, slowly, a bit at a time, bring that down. Bring that up, over. Alright, now we're going to zoom in, and I'm going to do a bit more detail work here. Pull the brush size down a bit now, and I'm going to pull that in there, and I'm going to pull it up here a little bit. I'm going to pull this one down a little bit. You can see how I'm kind of working with the natural way that the stem looks to kind of got this lump happening here, and actually that's kind of a good thing. Alright, now I'm going to go down here to the next one down here, which is called grow. And what this actually does is grow parts of your extrusion. I'm going to, well, I'll leave the brush size where it is, but I'm going to bring the strength down, so I don't want to overdo it, and I'm just going to actually grow a few areas here just to bring them up and bring them out a bit. And then I'm going to use this one over here, this one down here, sorry, which is the opposite, and it will shrink some of the areas. So some of these areas that are recessed in here, I'm actually going to shrink them, which will make the whole texture shrink, and it helps aid in the illusion that they're further away. And I'll shrink this area in here, and actually I'm going to bring this brush size way down, and I'm going to shrink this area in here just a bit more, and I can by adjusting the brush size and the strength as you do some of these areas, can really aid in making this look a whole lot more realistic. Now I'm going to do a bit more work up here on the top of the stem. As often is the case when pumpkins are picked in the field, sometimes there's a bit of the stem that's broken off, twisted off, and kind of sticking up. So I'm going to go back to my draw brush. I'm going to bump up the strength of this, bring the brush size up a bit, and I'm basically going to take this edge here. If you zoom in a bit, you can see it's already kind of poking up, and we're going to just enhance that. Just like that. And you can see how it does sort of smear it a little bit, but as it's kind of a tiny area of the pumpkin that we're going to be working with, we're not really going to notice that so much. So now I'm going to my brush size down, bring the strength down quite a bit, and I'm going to do some pushing and some pulling here. Alright, now that's looking really pretty good. So for today's tutorial, that gives you a pretty good idea how you can use the liquid color filter, along with Filter Forge's amazing texture creating capabilities, to do some pretty cool stuff. So we're going to go back to Xara now. I'm going to click the OK button on the liquid color filter. And again, I'm going to wait while this is applied, and I am going to lock this down. It's not that Xara won't reapply this filter. It will. It's just that it's going to slow my recording down a little bit. So we will pull this into place. Now, as you can see, this is still way too big. So I'm going to make this a bit smaller. And I'm actually going to pull it down here, which squashes it down further. But that's okay. That's a good thing. Now let's put it into place. Now I will zoom in and we will finish this up. Now you'll notice two things here. One, this has still got a fairly sharp edge to it. And we want to blend that in with the rest of the pumpkin. And two, this bit here is a little bit too wide and it should be really resized down a bit. So I'm going to start with our ellipse under here. And to do that, first thing actually I think we're going to do is this stem with this big area around it is preventing me from clicking things underneath it. And I know I can hold down Control, or not Control, rather Alt, and Alt click. But I think what I'm going to quickly do here is to eliminate some of this extra space that we really don't need. So to do that, I'm going to grab my shape tool and I'm just going to click around here. With my shape tool, like so. And I'm going to select that, and I'm going to actually Alt and hold on Alt and Shift at the same time to select both this shape I just drew and the object underneath it. You can see they're both selected. And I'm simply going to hold down the Control. I'm going to hit Control 3. And now you can see that this is sliced off the rest of that. And I'm left with this bit, which is going to be much easier to manage. So I can bring this down here. Click over here and hit select that. I'm now going to hold the Shift key and I'm going to pull these sides in a bit. Alright, that's looking better. Now we're going to hit the stem, and I'm going to go to the new eraser tool in Designer Pro X. This time I'm going to give this a lot of softness. I want to go way up to about the mid 90% range, and I'm going to just drop the size of this down, and I'm going to grab my stylus from the graphics tablet, and I am going to simply start making this much softer, and it's going to blend in to the pumpkin much better this way, like this. Alright. Now, I'm going to bring this down. And the next thing I am going to do is I'm going to grab the Shape Builder tool and I'm going to set my colors here. I'm going to grab the color picker eyedropper here, and I'm going to pick a color. I'll start with this brown color that I used here in the ellipse, and I'm going to, before I go any further, I'm going to hit escape to make sure everything is deselected, and I'm going to use my transparency tool. I'm going to give this a little bit of transparency. I don't want to overdo it, and I'm going to just use a smaller brush, and I'm just going to quickly go in here now and add in a little bit of, okay, I think I need to add some softness. We're going to soften this up. And I'm going to add in a little bit of this here. Just like that. And I think I will select this and add a bit more transparency, I think, to this in a bit. What this is going to do is add in a bit of shading and a bit of shadowing. I'm going to make this much darker, I think. And I don't think I'll do that. We'll go to the transparency tool, and I'm going to up the transparency on that. There, now you can see how that's added in a bit of shading. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do the same thing over in here. And add in a bit more shading there. And we'll just quickly do this. And again, back to the transparency tool, and just bump up that transparency. Alright, that's given us a little bit of extra shading. So now let's zoom out and we'll have a quick look at that. That's already looking really good and really realistic. We're going to further bring in, I believe, this will make it a bit better. I'm going to bring this in and I'm going to bring it up. Now let's have a look at our pumpkin. You can see that looks pretty good. One more little trick I'm going to show you. And I'm going to zoom in up here to the top of the pumpkin. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the shape tool here, and I'm going to start from about here, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to create a shape kind of following the pumpkin stem here. And now I'm going to really zoom in because I want to follow this here. Doesn't have to be extremely accurate, but it doesn't hurt to be close. We do want this edge to look a bit rough. But as I am going to feather this shape, it doesn't have to be hugely accurate, but we do want it to follow it because I'm not going to feather it a whole lot. Alright, now what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to give this a bit of feathering to blend this in, and I am going to give this a lighter color. I'm going to give it a flat fill to begin with. So fill, change that to flat. And I'm going to use this color picker to pick up one of the lighter colors in the surface of the stem. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the transparency tool, and again with the fractal plasma. And I'm going to bring this down quite a bit. And if I zoom out, have a look, I'm going to use that profile slider I was talking about before, and I'm going to actually give this a sharper look. And this is just going to give us maybe a bit of a rough looking edge here where it's been broken off. And we can always go in with our shape editor tool if we want and maybe bring it down a little bit. And I'm going to profile that feathering that I put on there too, just to kind of give it more of an edge. Alright, now let's zoom out and have a look. Now that looks more like the top of the pumpkin was maybe partially cut and maybe twisted off a little bit, leaving this sticky out bit here. So let's zoom out now and have a look at the whole creation. It's fairly realistic. I know it's not completely 100% photorealistic, but as an illustration, I think it looks pretty darn good. And this gives you a pretty good idea what you can do with Xara and Filter Forge and some shapes and Xara's extrusion feature. Thanks for watching.